finished talking about the supply of labor, and we ended with this figure, which shows us that the quantity of labor supplied rises as the real wage increases. Now we will derive the demand for labor. Demand for labor is going to come from firms. Firms hire labor, and they use them in their production technology in order to produce goods. So equation 6 captures the notation that we're going to be using. This is the labor input, and D is supposed to represent labor demand. We're going to treat right now the capital stock as if it's just fixed. It's a constant. We're not deciding how that gets determined. And so what this equation says is that firms hire some number of workers, or some number of hours of workers. They combine those workers with their fixed capital stock in this production technology. And then that gets hit by this rather important little variable called Z, which is total factor productivity. And out pops goods, which is Y. This total factor productivity is a variable that if it increases, it makes both capital and labor more productive. So as I said, for now, we're just going to hold the capital stock fixed at K star. And if we do that, we can then plot output as a function of employment, as we will see shortly. There are 4 properties of the production function. One is called constant returns to scale. And what constant returns to scale says is that if you scale up your capital inputs and your labor inputs by the same factor, in this case lambda, you can think of this as you double the amount of capital, you double the amount of labor, and lo and behold, you get double the output. So this is just lambda times y. A second important property is that both capital and labor have a marginal product that's positive. So MPN is the marginal product of labor, MPK is the marginal product of capital, and these are both positive. However, they exhibit diminishing marginal product. So what that says is that although the marginal product of labor is always positive, as you increase the amount of labor that you employ, the new labor that you hire is going to be less productive than the previous unit of labor that you hired. So I think this is probably a property that you learned about in micro. And then the fourth property is that if the capital stock is higher, so here you think about, say, 2 parallel economies, they're identical in every way except one has a higher capital stock than the other, well, then the one with the higher capital stock is going to have a higher marginal product of labor. And that's because the workers are going to have more capital to work with, and that's going to make them more productive. This is the graph of the aggregate production function. And what we have done here is we remember that we are holding the capital stock fixed at K star. And what this says is that as you vary the number of hours that you employ, it tells you how much output you get. And so this nice, smooth, what's called a concave function is the production function. So this is Z times F of K star N. One thing you should notice is that this production function gets flatter and flatter as N rises. And so the slope of this production function, say, at point A, is going to be steeper than the slope at, say, call this point B. Well, that's just exhibiting the diminishing marginal product of labor. Why? Well, because, what's the slope of this production function? It's going to be delta Y over delta N, and that is just the definition of the marginal product of labor. So this graph just plots the marginal product of labor. So now what we have on this vertical axis is the marginal product. Remember, that's just delta Y over delta N. And on the horizontal axis, we have hours worked. And this is just saying what I said before, which is that as the number of hours worked increases, the marginal product of labor declines. So this is exhibiting diminishing marginal product of labor. And this graph is asking the counterfactual that if you have these two parallel economies, one economy has more capital than the other, so economy 2 has more capital than economy 1, well then every worker, including the marginal worker, in economy 2 is going to be more productive than in economy 1. And that's just saying that the marginal product of labor is going to shift out.